Hello everybody, welcome back to the Yotso Tech Tracks YouTube channel. Once again, I'm here talking about this 2016 Ram 1500 truck I have. And today's topic, let's talk a little bit about axle ratios. Just a little bit of a recap. This is a 2016 Ram 1500 pickup truck. It has the 5.7 liter V8 Hemi, 65 RFE automatic transmission, and it has the BorgWarner 44-45 part-time transfer case. It is crew cab, the big doors, short box, and those are the basic specifications regarding the mechanics. The axle ratio in this vehicle is a 355. That means 3.55 to 1. The pinion is going to spin 3.55 times around for the ring gear to turn once. That is what that ratio is referring to. Basically, the higher this number, for example 355, 392, 4.1 in other manufacturers, the more gear reduction you have at the wheels, which is going to translate to more road torque at the wheels. Basically, the torque that the tires can apply to the pavement is going to be multiplied by that amount. As I mentioned in previous videos, if any of you have watched them, I would have loved to have the 392 axle ratio from the factory. That was going to be the original specification on this vehicle. However, plans changed when we found this truck on the lot. It was still a 2016 model year, and I was still looking at brand new 2016 model years. But again, many dealerships have vehicles they like to get rid of quickly, which is the vehicles that are already on the lot. And we found an amazing deal for this, and that is the reason we ended up with it. Now, I'm going to be using this vehicle primarily for a daily driver and slash adventure vehicle on the weekend, which means it's going to be going overlanding, touring, camping, backcountry adventures, anything off the pavement. This vehicle will be the primary vehicle I use, and it's going to haul the whole family. It's going to be able to pull a trailer, nothing major, just a camper trailer that is going to be a couple of 1,000 pounds in weight, nothing to even stress the limits of this vehicle. I believe the towing capacity with this axle ratio and this powertrain combination comes in at around 8,600 pounds, which is still significant for what I need. So going to 355 instead of 392s is not a huge difference for me. However, in my opinion, I always prefer to have my vehicles with as deep of a gear reduction from the factory as possible for many different reasons. When you're looking at a vehicle that is primarily stock and it is going to be driven unloaded with not much cargo, not much weight, not much load on the vehicle, you're pretty much okay with those higher numerical ratios. I believe this model year also had a 321 axle ratio, and I'm not sure exactly. However, I believe that was available with different engines, and definitely the 6-cylinder, perhaps the diesel, eco diesel that was available in this, as well as 2-wheel drive models. As far as I know, 392 was the optional gear ratio for $100 extra Canadian, and 355 axle ratio was the standard with this powertrain. Now that is pretty much a good combination for fuel economy and pulling power, as far as hauling, pushing, pulling, any of that. Basically, the lower gear ratio you have in the axles, you have more pulling power, which translates to the vehicle getting off the line easier. However, given the same transmission and the equal vehicles tire sizes, when you're comparing two of them, the one with the deeper axle ratio, on paper it will use more fuel, for example on the highway. When driving on the highway, let's say 100 kilometers an hour, there's going to be a couple of hundred RPM difference that the engine has to rev to turn those tires at that vehicle speed. In my opinion, and this is from past experience through many pickup trucks and various vehicles I had in the past, I much prefer a lower gear ratio for a couple of reasons. It opens up future opportunities to go with larger tires, which are always going to be heavier in weight, and is going to make the powertrain see less load when you have those larger tires to turn, because aftermarket tires, when you're going to aftermarket rims, such as I might be in the future, they do have a significant weight increase compared to stock ones, and it is going to be rotational mass, which is going to translate into basically significant load that the engine has to overcome. As far as aerodynamics, my vehicle is not stock anymore. It does have a leveling kit in the front. It does have basically a winch mount bush bar grill guard in the very front end, and it has wider tires, and it has roof rack on top with a couple of lights that are protruding past the cab of the vehicles. I mean, the aerodynamic drag is already greater than the factory vehicle that's just coming off the showroom floor. So already this vehicle has to already push a larger load when driving basically through the air. If you have deeper axle ratios, it will just make your vehicle easier to turn those wheels, no matter what the vehicle is outfitted with. It is basically going to have an easier time driving down the road. Now, when the vehicles get tested brand new in a laboratory, they have to certify all these powertrain combinations. So on paper, technically, the 355 axle ratio would give a better fuel economy compared to 392, which the window sticker on new vehicles represent. However, in the real world, when you do load up your vehicles and you're hauling heavy weights and you're pulling trailers, and also the aerodynamic profile of camper trailers, for example, are very tall, and all that load is going to be translated into a greater wind resistance that the vehicle has to overcome. So in those cases, if you use your truck for actual truck stuff, such as pulling, pushing, whether it might be a snowplow in a 3/4 ton or 1 ton, or just pulling a small camper, or even hauling a lot of weight in your bed, it is always easier for the vehicle to get the weight going when you're trying to get the vehicle off from a starting line. Personally, I never tow with any automatic transmission in overdrive, so it is never going to be economical no matter what you're pulling, because overdrive ratios do tend to put a lot of load on the transmission, and clutch packs might have tendency to slip, and you get into transmission issues, overheating issues with transmissions, and basically it's not good for automatics to be to overdrive when you're putting a large load on them, when you're pulling a load on the highway, for example, because it will cause the very least for the transmission to hunt. It is going to lug the engine, and if you don't have a deep enough axle ratio, it is going to be coming in and out of overdrive. This 65 RFE automatic transmission is technically a 6-speed, and 4th gear is 1-to-1, which I always drive when I'm pulling a trailer, especially uphills, mountain roads. I never leave it into overdrive, because no matter what vehicle it is just going to put wear and tear on your transmission that you don't need to. When you're going downhill, it is one thing. When there's no load on the vehicle, sometimes I do put it into 5th, or the occasional top gear, 6th, which is 0.67 to 1. But even downhill, I usually keep it in that 4th gear, 1-to-1 ratio, because engine braking is very important for when you're loaded and you're carrying a lot of weight. That will just control your vehicle a lot better. So most of the time, almost 90% of the time when I'm towing a trailer, I just put it into 4th gear, into this one. I can drive it with the range select on this vehicle. It has on the column shifter a plus and a minus. Basically, when I put it into drive, I can cycle with the plus and the minus buttons to select 4th gear. So it is going to shift 1, 2, and 4 because of the shift pattern in this transmission. So it's going to go from 3-to-1 1st gear, 1.67 to 1 2nd gear, and 1-to-1, which is technically 4th gear. 3rd gear in this transmission is it's more of a kick down gear. Unless you are manually selecting the gears one by one, you can access all 6 forward speeds. However, when I put it into drive and select 4, the shift pattern is going to be 1, 2, and 4, which is basically, it puts the vehicle into a very easy driving mode. There's not much shifting going on. There's not much heat buildup going on. As previously discussed on my channel, this transmission, as far as 2nd gear and up, is already locking the converter, the torque converter, which means heat buildup is reduced to very little. Basically, a normal shift pattern in this transmission is going to go from first gear unlocked. It's going to shift to second at a very low speed, around 20-30 kilometers an hour. It is already locking up second. Then it unlocks the converter, shifts to third or fourth, whatever it might be, locks the converter. Then it unlocks it, goes up to the next gear and locks it. So pretty much as soon as the transmission is warmed up around 20-25 degrees Celsius, it is almost always in lockup mode. So heat dissipation is not a problem, even in the summer on big mountains and pulling larger loads. Again, 392 would have been amazing to have. However, I will not get into the trouble of swapping gear ratios for a couple of reasons. The hassle expense is just too great for me. When you specify vehicles from the factory, for example, this vehicle was only a $100 Canadian option to go up to the 392 axle ratio, and for that much they basically put a different set of ratios in there. The speedometer, odometer is calibrated for it, and away you go with your full powertrain warranty. As soon as you open up the differentials front and rear, you get into powertrain warranty issues possibly in the future. I don't have too much of an issue with that. However, the expense of swapping out ring and pinions is very high. For the parts, you have to get the gears, for example, bearings, usually seals. Very good idea to switch them out, because since you're already ripping everything apart, it doesn't make sense to use old parts. Doesn't matter how old or new they are. You have to calibrate the speedometer and odometer for accuracy of speedometer readings, as well as proper transmission shift points. Everything goes hand in hand. So you either need a programmer, or you have to pay somebody to program it for you. And taking it to shop, these vehicles can get difficult to do this job in. Some other vehicles, such as Toyotas, they have what's called third members in the axles, where you just pull the axle shafts out a little bit, and that third member, basically the center differential assembly, pulls out, and you can do the work on the bench. It makes it a lot easier, quicker. You're not fighting around underneath the vehicle. So some vehicles tend to be easier, but on this Ram, for example, it is a straightforward axle. It is a one-piece unit. You cannot remove any center section of it, so shop rates are going to be high, because you have to get underneath the vehicle. They have to do everything from underneath, where it's not too easy. The front independent suspension has basically an aluminum axle assembly that the CV joints have to come out, the CV drive shafts have to come out, the prop shaft. Basically, there's a lot of tear down, and the whole front independent suspension axle has to come off, has to be split in half. Ring and pinion has to be set up. Again, it's double the time, double the effort, double the money if you have a four-wheel drive vehicle. So unfortunately, I have to live with this 355 axle ratio. In my situation, it's not going to be horrible, because I don't plan to go on anything larger than perhaps 35-inch diameter tires in the future. Right now, as you may or may not know from previous videos, this vehicle does have 33-inch equivalent tires, which are 285/70/17. They're a very common size. I got a great deal for them. They are Goodyear Wrangler Duratrax, load range D. They have a very good weight capacity. Traction is excellent in wet, snow, dry, whatever, you name it. Going to larger tires, I also don't want to stress this vehicle too much, because again, I'm going to get into issues of gear hunting on the highway if I'm pulling the load. It is not a diesel, but even if you do have a diesel with very high torque, it is still going to be hunting if you have an automatic transmission. So whatever vehicle came with from the factory, I always have to deal with that situation. Again, I got a really good deal on this vehicle, and if I could have spec'd it out, 100% I recommend the 392 axle ratio. It's going to be quicker off the line. It's going to have better response. The little bit of fuel savings you might experience with 355s versus 392s are very, very insignificant. And in many situations, there is not much of a difference at all. So I believe that's all for today regarding these axle ratios in these Ram 1500 trucks. If you have the 392s, enjoy them. It gives you a a world of possibilities to go with a larger set of tires. If a lot of people tend to upgrade their tires to that, it'll make the vehicle get those tires turned easier. It'll make the trailer pulling a little bit easier. With 392 axle ratios, I believe with this powertrain combinations, I could have gone with close to 10,000 pounds towing capacity. However, because of the 355, this vehicle is limited to about 8,600 pounds, which once again, for my situation, it's not a big deal. I'm not going to be anywhere near that weight, closer to maybe 4,000 or 5,000 pounds maximum, and this truck will pull it no problem. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me. If you have any comments, questions, leave them below and give it a thumbs up if you like the content. I will be going into a lot of detail regarding this truck, regarding the near future build-up for camping, overlanding, home adventures, daily driving, you name it. This is my one vehicle that's going to be doing it all. So thanks again for watching. Take care and see you next time. Bye-bye.